Every state in America has its own list of celebrity people. Those who do great deeds, and those who do some of the worst crimes in history. North Carolina is no different. Today, we will highlight North Carolina's most prolific and heinous serial killer, responsible for the rape and murder of over 10 young women. He is Henry Louis Wallace, the Taco Bell Strangler. Henry Louis Wallace, born in Barnwell, South Carolina on November 4th, 1965, was the son of Lottie Mae Wallace. His father was a married schoolteacher who walked out on Lottie Mae when he found out she was pregnant. Lottie Mae became a textile worker and often worked long hours. She was said to be a harsh disciplinarian and would often criticize her son for even the smallest mistakes. Henry would later attend Barnwell High School, where he was elected to the student council and would also become a cheerleader. After graduating high school in 1983, he would attend several colleges and also work as a disc jockey for a Barnwell radio station. And in 1987, he married his high school sweetheart, Moretta Bradham. But it was during his time in the U.S. Navy that things started to turn bad for Henry Louis Wallace. He joined the Navy in 1985, and during his time in the service, his drug use began. While stationed in Washington, he would also be served warrants related to several burglaries in and around the Seattle metro area. In January 1988, Wallace was arrested for breaking into a hardware store, and in June, he pled guilty to second-degree burglary. A judge sentenced him to 2 years of supervised probation, but according to his probation officer, Wallace would not show up for most mandatory meetings. Before the end of 1988, Wallace was honorably discharged from the U.S. Navy. The next 2 years are a bit of a blank page for Wallace. Between the times of 1988 and 1990, he worked as a chemical operator for Sandoz Chemical Company, and it was also during this period that his marriage fell apart. But on March 8, 1990, his small-time criminal activities would escalate out of control when Wallace murdered Tashonda Bethia. Tashonda lived with her aunt and uncle in the same neighborhood as the Wallace family, and on March 8th, Wallace saw her walking down the road. During his confession, Wallace said that he picked her up from the side of the road and then drove her to a remote wooded area where he would sexually assault and then murder her before dumping her body in a nearby lake. Her body would not be discovered for several weeks. Wallace would be questioned by authorities for the murder of Tashonda Bethia and also about the rape of another 16-year-old girl, but was never charged for either case. In November of 1991, Wallace would relocate to Charlotte, North Carolina, and would take several jobs working at different fast food chains. In May of 1992, Wallace struck again, this time killing convicted drug dealer and prostitute Sharon Nance. Upon demanding payment for her services, Wallace beat Sharon to death before dumping her body by nearby railroad tracks. Her body would be found days later. Only a short time later, in June of 1992, Caroline Love would get off her shift working at Bojangles and head home to her apartment, where her roommate Sadie was not there, but Sadie's boyfriend, Henry Louis Wallace, was. Wallace proceeded to rape and strangle Caroline Love in her apartment, and then dump her body in a wooded area. He would then go with her sister and roommate to the police to file a missing persons report. It would be almost 2 years in March of 1994 before her body was discovered. By 1993, Wallace would become a supervisor at a local Taco Bell, where he would then find his next victim. Shauna Hawk was a college student studying to be a paralegal and was supervised by Wallace at the same Taco Bell. He would rape and strangle her in her own home, and then later on attend her funeral. In June of that same year, he would rape and strangle another co-worker, Audrey Spain. Her body was found only 2 days later. It would be over a year before Wallace struck again, but when he did, it was in August of 1993 when Wallace raped and strangled Valencia Jumper, a 21-year-old college student that was a friend of his sister's. Different than his other murders, he would set fire to her body to cover up his crime. He would also attend her funeral, similar to Shauna Hawk, and even sent condolences to her family. Only a month later, on the night of September 14, 1993, Wallace would commit one of his most heinous acts against Michelle Stinson, a college student and dedicated single mother of 2 young sons. Stinson was a friend of Wallace's from Taco Bell, but on this night, Wallace would rape, strangle, and stab her in front of her oldest son, who at the time was only 3 years old. In February of 1994, Wallace was arrested for shoplifting, but police never made a connection between him and the murders. And then at the end of February of the same year, Wallace raped and strangled Vanessa Little Mack in her apartment. Vanessa was the sister of one of Wallace's co-workers from Taco Bell. She left behind 2 young daughters. Only a month later, on March 8, 1994, Wallace would rob, rape, and strangle Betty Jean Balcom in her apartment. She was a co-worker of Wallace's girlfriend at a local fast food restaurant. That same night, Wallace would return to the same apartment complex and rape and strangle Brandy June Henderson while she held on to her 10-month-old son. Wallace would also strangle the infant, but luckily he survived. The police would beef up patrols in East Charlotte after 2 bodies of young black women were found at the Lake apartment complex. Even so, Wallace managed to sneak through and rob and strangle Deborah Ann Slaughter, who had been a co-worker of his girlfriend. He then stabbed her 38 times in the stomach and chest. Her body was found in March of 1994. Finally, on March 13, 1994, Wallace's reign of terror would come to an end when he was arrested by police, and for 12 hours would confess to the murders of 10 women in the Charlotte area, and also confess to the murder of his original victim, Tashonda Bethea. Wallace's trial began in September of 1996, and on January 7, 1997, Wallace was found guilty of 9 murders. On January 29th, he was sentenced to 9 death sentences. As to date, no execution date has been set for Henry Louis Wallace, the Taco Bell Strangler.